Okay, they can hear us both now. Great. Awesome.
Cool.
All right,
Okay.
sorry about that, everyone. A little bit of a technical difficulty there. Well, I'll just say quickly what I said before, which is it's great to have Daniel here. He's the chief tech officer at Gravity Sketch, and it's great to have him today. He's going to be just talking about his journey, his professional journey, how he got into coding, and how he's gotten to where he is now. Also talking about a little bit of the history of Gravity Sketch and maybe a little bit of where it's headed. And so feel free to ask questions during the live. I'll pop those over. And in this case, Daniel's probably going to be a little more qualified actually to answer most of your questions. And so feel free to ask away. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction, my name is Jaron Dorman. I'm the design community manager here at Gravity Sketch, just connecting all of you to Gravity Sketch and doing the live demos and things like that. So it's great to interact with all of you. But without further ado, I'll just pass it over to Daniel to share a little bit about who he is. If I'm sure a lot of you probably aren't familiar with Daniel, so I'll just let him give a little bit of a background on himself there.
Yeah, I can give it a go. I guess I don't know. I don't know if you expect me to roll directly into my life story or more about just what's going on right now. I don't know if anyone is on the Gravity Sketch Discord, but you'll often see me on there. Otherwise, I was kind of the first person who joined the Gravity Sketch team from like a technical background and programming and that kind of thing. Um, it was me and the other co-founders that kind of built out the first prototypes of Gravity Sketch. Started way back at the iPad days, but it was really the VR kind of I don't know, the VR tool that was what really made things kind of feel like they were happening, and all the new stuff kind of, I guess that's when it got exciting, and we felt like we got a foothold on the world of design. Um, but yeah, I guess it's been like, God, it must be nearly 6 years I've been doing Gravity Sketch in February. It's a really long time now.
Wow.
Um, it's kind of like my first actual job. I did some contracting beforehand, but I guess I don't know. That's definitely what do I do these days? I try and help the team figure out how to make Gravity Sketch awesome, particularly from the tech side of things, and helping us come up with R&D and kind of like new ideas and directions we could try and explore and head in.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's actually another reason why it's great to have to be interviewing you is I don't think I talk to you enough, and so it's awesome to just hear a little bit more about your story and what you do, and obviously like I get from the company chats just like bits and pieces here and there, and obviously like from the meetings and everything, but yeah, it's great to have you, and I'm just want to go maybe a little bit back to the beginning. If you could share just a little bit about what got you into coding, what sort of set you on this path to where you've gotten now. What was sort of maybe the catalyst for that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it was something, I was definitely one of the people who had no idea what they wanted to do with their life. I think that's pretty normal. I went to uni and studied physics at university because I was pretty good at physics. It was interesting, that kind of thing. And part of that course did have some vague programming and kind of coding kind of stuff and that kind of thing, but it was never like the main focus of what I was doing. But basically, what happened was at the end of my kind of 3 years at university, um, I thought I was going on to do a master's course, but didn't get the grades to get into the course. Basically, I got a 2.2, whereas you needed to get a 2.1 to get into university, into the master's course, I guess. And so I kind of, I don't know if dropped out of university is quite the right term because I did get a degree and everything like that, and it's not that bad. But certainly, my university career ended a year shorter than I expected, and so I had even less plans of what on earth I was going to do with myself. Um, and so for a good period of time, I just played video games and was like, "Meh, whatever. I'll figure it out at some point." Um, no real clear plans even at that moment coming out of university and that kind of thing. But what really happened, and this is, I guess, a shout out to Ken, who's definitely not watching. He currently lives in New Zealand, if anything, but he is definitely not watching this. Maybe he'll see this one day. He'd also graduated maybe a year before I did, We both basically met and spent all of our time playing games together. I was like his biggest fan on a video game forum, basically Audio Surf, which is a very old game these days. And I'd like message him saying, "Oh my God, you're so amazing at this game! Like, how do you get so good? Can you give me some tips, some pointers?" But we ended up like making friends and playing games all the time and that kind of thing. Um, and he basically had picked up Unity, which is a game engine, and he was like he decided he was going to start making video games. Um, at the time, he definitely didn't have any serious projects or anything like that, but it was really cool to see that he basically like picked up this software, Unity, sounded great, had made some prototypes and some fun little things and ideas, and he made a Kenculator, that was a calculator, but the Ken version, and this kind of stuff. And I thought this was really cool, and so I downloaded Unity as well and made some really awful games and joke games where it was like, my friend was in a platformer game and this kind of stupid stuff, and just made a load of like really fun prototypes, I guess, of, I don't know, they were never really meant to turn into a serious game. It was just a really fun way of making things that you could play. And as someone who liked playing games a lot, obviously I found it really interesting to be able to make my own games. And that kind of evolved, I guess. Like I ended up making Leapy Mole, which is like it's on the Google Play Store even today. It's like my first ever actual start to finish game. I made all the art, all the sound effects. Pretty much everyone who I know has probably I've made them download it and play it at some point, at least to do with work. Um, it's a very stupid game. It was back the days when Flappy Bird was like the big thing, and so this was like, why would you want to be a Flappy Bird when you could be a mole that leaps? And that was the whole premise. It was daft, but it was a lot of fun making it. And honestly, I think Leapy Mole was the I guess the only portfolio item I had. I didn't really count it as that at the time. That set me on this actual career path. I think I don't even know if it's true today anymore, but certainly like when I started looking for work in Unity, I didn't even start off with that. I guess my original intention was to basically just make video games, be an indie game developer, and be successful in that way. But watching my friend Ken, who basically spent like who was spending years and years of his life, he did a Kickstarter making this game called Logic Bots. It became so obvious how difficult and challenging it was to make a big video game as an individual. You don't just have to come up with a cool idea for a game. You have to build out the whole game. You have to do the art, the sound effects, the music, the marketing, the support. It's like a ridiculously huge task to do on your own, and I basically decided it was almost impossible to do as an individual. It depends on what kind of game you're trying to achieve, but anything of any serious scope. And there's no way that you can basically convince other people to help you on a project like that without having money. You have to build a company, make a game studio, all this kind of stuff. That's something that you certainly can't do when you've just graduated from uni and you're in a ton of debt and you're living out of the cheapest flat you could find and that kind of thing. And so with the idea that the worst possible thing that could happen is I would end up having to get a job at a supermarket or something like that, I went out onto Upwork, which was called Odesk at the time, put my profile on it, and went out looking for jobs in Unity. Basically, I was like, people would post up things and they'd be like AR related or Unity related and all sorts of stuff. And it was really easy to find like simple tasks that people wanted, like make an AR invitation to an event or something like that, and just started basically picking up work based on that. Doing random contract jobs. I don't think it paid particularly well, but it was really, really easy and fun to do. And I think I really liked working, I guess, for myself or from home and that kind of stuff. You could work whatever hours you wanted. If you wanted to play video games for a week, no one could really stop you. That was a lot of fun. I definitely hadn't fully committed to the fact that I had to be an adult at this time of my life. And so that was kind of how it kind of progressed. I did more and more of this contract work. There were some bigger projects, some smaller projects, lots of stuff that has never really had like a public release or anything like particularly exciting or that I can point out at or anything like that. But I feel like the only real way, or I guess like the only way that I can kind of connect the story together is, at some point, basically this company from London reached out to me and said like, hey, so we're this new young startup. We're based in London. We're trying to make this 3D creation tool for an iPad. I don't remember exactly what the original. I probably could have even brought it up, but the original kind of like pitch was. And before, like I knew it that afternoon, I think I had an interview with them. We got on Skype. I put a shirt on. It was like, it was like the first actual real job interview rather than just applying for a bit of contract work. And like for my to prepare for it, I watched the TEDx talk of Gravity Sketch, which is surprisingly relevant even today, where they show off this absolute disaster of a prototype iPad app, and talk about a lot of the same concepts of what we're working on today and what we're trying to do with Gravity Sketch today, though at the same time. I think there was only me and one other person in the running for this job, and I managed to get it because the other person refused to even get on a video call or something like that. I can't remember the exact story, but got it by default, which was great. They sent me the source code. It was I don't know, even with my very limited and unprofessional programming skills, there was a huge load of stuff that I could see we could easily improve and iterate upon. And so in the first week, we managed to make this thing like 5, 10 times better. You could save things and draw basic shapes on an iPad. It was really cool. We just absolutely like kicked off in a really good direction and started making like headway in what is, and I guess like I don't know if it's the right time or if I really need to go into the depths of it, but like what Gravity Sketch the vision was way back then.
Yeah.
It is very similar to what it was today, I feel like, or at least my understanding of what Gravity Sketch is meant to be is that I don't know, like I always struggle to say it without talking for absolutely ages because it almost feels like you have to qualify it with all sorts of different complicated things. But certainly back then, I'd used 3D modeling programs and I knew they were awful. I tried to use Blender, I tried to use 3ds Max and all of those, and found it very difficult to even make something from my perspective as someone who was technical but perhaps not that creative. And it also makes a lot of sense that all of these like designers and people in industry and people making even 3D assets for games and characters and all sorts of stuff, all of those like workflows right now started with 2D sketches and sketches on pen and paper and ideas that people had, but they had to show it to other people through a drawing. And that never kind of made tons of sense, right? At least to me as well. Like, if you're making a 3D thing, why do we all express our ideas and our creativity through 2D, through flat things? And I think it became fairly clear over the years and watching people work it that like 2D is an incredibly flexible medium where you can kind of bend the rules and do whatever you want, be ambiguous, loads of creativity that's possible there. And that's one of the reasons why 3D programs fall apart, is they're so much more about great engineering output, every vertex in the right place, this kind of thing. I think it did honestly take me a very long time to really understand like why Gravity Sketch needed to exist, and why we didn't just make Blender for iPads or something like that. I think at this kind of time I had no idea, but it was a really fun problem. Like Gravity Sketch is full of mathematical challenges and UX challenges and things like that were really exciting and really fun to work on, because back then the company had no money and no clear prospects and no obvious signs of success or anything like that. And so it really was like the drive to make something really cool and solve interesting problems back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they reached out to me, they hired me for a week, and they were like, actually, do you want to do a month? And then actually 3 months, and then it was okay.
Wow.
Actually, we want to hire you. And I like got a train down to London. I stayed the night in one of the co-founders' flats and that kind of thing. We had burgers. I remember it was like very exciting for me from where I was living in Nottingham to come down to London for this job interview and all this kind of thing. And it was all very exciting. And meet all these people that I'd watched on a TEDx talk in person, and it was like crazy that it was like, oh wow, this was a real thing, and these are real people, and
Wow.
now I'm in London, and it was all very starry-eyed kind of thing at the time. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And just like, I don't know, I'm just kind of backtracking to the app and sort of like the excitement of just building the program and just making something new, making something exciting. And that was one of the things I was going to ask, which was what some of the like initial challenges were with building Gravity Sketch, because it was initially on iPad first, correct? Before actually eventually transitioned into VR. I think a lot of people don't know that actually it started as an iPad app. What was that process of transitioning from iPad to V? What was that decision basically?
I mean, I think I can't remember the exact timeline. I feel like it was about 1 or 2 years that we'd been working on this iPad app before we transitioned to VR. Although we'd played around, no, that's not entirely true. We'd done lots of VR experiments and things like that with like the Oculus DK1 and the DK2 as well, and this kind of thing. And there was lots of kind of interesting ideas around VR, but there was no real commercial hardware. Basically, it was before the Vive and the Oculus CV1 existed. And so the iPad was clearly the most sensible platform to work with. Basically, it was powerful enough to do 3D rendering and all this kind of cool stuff. Apple had just come out with the iPad Pro, and it had a pencil, so you could like, it was actually taking creatives seriously. It was basically the device for creatives, and it still is.
Yeah.
And so I guess and it was a very accessible device, but also a very crowded market, which was tricky. And I think we struggled to figure out, even as a company, like where Gravity Sketch could be useful. At the time, we were very focused on like 3D printing and kids drawing in Gravity Sketch and this kind of stuff, and all these kind of, I don't know which did all work and was a thing, but it wasn't really as focused as like making this useful for people who are actually doing this as their daily job, and like, proper business use cases and this kind of thing. And it was really when the Vive came out and Shay bought a Vive with his own money, and I came over and stayed in like his flat for a week, where I think this was what happened. Basically was where we'd scored like a gig at the V&A Museum where we were going to do some kind of live demo of Gravity Sketch or something like that, a VR Gravity Sketch. And at the time, it didn't even exist when we agreed to do it. But we were like,
Wow.
okay, let's give this a go. Let's see what we can do. And so Shay bought a Vive. I came to the studio, which was like a little like startup incubator in Battersea, which was part of the Royal College of Art, from what I remember. And just smashed together whatever we could, basically. Like, how do we take this cool like drawing technology that we have for an iPad and make it work in virtual reality? And so like a week's worth of hacking later, and we definitely had at least the very, very core of Gravity Sketch, which was you have VR controllers, you pull a trigger and you can draw a noodle, and you can grab them and move them around and scale them up and down, and you could choose a color. And I think that was basically all we had. That was the full feature set.
Wow.
But yeah, from there, like it kind of exploded or took off. It felt like we invited a bunch of like students from the Royal College of Art to come and give it a try. There was like performance artists to car designers and automotive and that kind of stuff,
Wow.
and industrial design, and basically anyone who would kind of thought it sounded interesting came along and gave it a go. And yeah, it was just crazy, basically. I think I'd gone back home at this time, so I had to like remote in and screen share on the computer and see what was going on. But like there was a load of different people that came in and basically just drew loads of cool stuff. Shout out to Paul Peliste, who was one of the first people who kind of like basically drew cars and came to the V&A exhibit and basically showed off what he'd been doing in Gravity Sketch.
Wow.
At the time, it was just noodly line rather than Gravity Sketch, I feel like, but it was enough to really see like, okay, you can actually like sit down in a chair and draw a car around you and do all of this really cool stuff. And kind of the whole, I guess one of the biggest problems that pen and paper has is that it's not very spatial, and the biggest problem that computer screen has is it's not very spatial, and 3D is really hard to understand in both those mediums. And so VR was basically the superpower or cheat code that made 3D suddenly very obvious, very intuitive. It was basically, well, there is no like layer or barrier or boundary, right? You just understand the 3D because it's there in front of you. Your eyes can perceive it. It's kind of obvious. I don't know.
It's intuitive.
It's intuitive, yeah. Intuitively, you know what you've made. You can understand the 3D thing that you've created because it's there in the room with you, even if it is a virtual room and that kind of thing. And so for this V&A event, we made this like challenge version of Gravity Sketch where you were in this like really awfully 3D modeled mountain range, or you're on the moon or something like that, and there was this great big like chasm or valley in front of you, and you had to like draw your own bridge to cross it or something like that. And
It's
that was how
awesome.
we got people to like put the headset on and try this out and explore what it's like to draw in 3D. And it was really crazy to see all the reactions and people like trying this out and using our like 1 week complete and utter terrible hack that wasn't terrible in terms of like a product or in terms of an experience, in terms of everything else, sure,
Yeah.
but um, yeah, it was really
But
exciting to see what people made.
yeah, wow. And some of the, like when you're talking about like the different kinds of creative people that where you were attracting, I mean, I think that reflects even today just like the all the kinds of different people that use Gravity Sketch for different purposes. Even
Yeah,
still now, like it definitely it's very apparent that ever since the beginning, it kind of just brought all kinds of different people together because it's almost kind of a fundamental creative experience. It doesn't really um, it's not really partial to a certain uh, sort of a certain direction. I would say, I guess.
yeah, I mean, for me, it's the same thing as like, there's nothing about a piece of paper that makes it particularly good for drawing cars on or anything like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But people use pen and paper or the digital versions to draw cars all the time, or whatever it may be, whatever they're trying to design. And so I think Gravity Sketch is the same in that way, in that it lets you make shapes and express ideas and thoughts and captures the movements that you're making. But otherwise, as a blessing or a curse, it doesn't make you a good artist or a good designer. It really is on the artist or designer or creative person to make it of it what they want and to make it look, feel great. And it still relies on like the fundamental
Yeah.
principles of creating something that looks and feels great. It can't do any magic for you, but it can let you express kind of thing.
Yeah, that's so true. I think I've said this on one of the lives before, but I just remember maybe like I think it's about 4 years ago now. This is the first time I tried Gravity Sketch, and it was because of Gravity Sketch that I bought my first VR system because I wanted to use it at home. But my school was using it, and one of the senior students was making his capstone, or at least designing his capstone vehicle in Gravity Sketch. And I was there late and I saw him doing something, and it was mirrored on the TV, and I was wondering like what is that? I'd never seen it before on the TV. And he's like, "Oh, this is Gravity Sketch." And he's like, "You want to try it?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I put on the headset, and as soon as I drew just one stroke, I was like, all of the stars aligned. It was that moment. Like this is the answer to, I mean, a lot of the frustrations I was having as a design student, but I would later learn that a lot of people, it was a solution for a lot of people's sort of creative expression in 3D. And, just because of that, what you talked about earlier, the intuitiveness, there's not really, you kind of already know what you want to do. Whereas in Blender or some of these other programs, you have to almost know what you need to do first before you can even do what you want to do. Whereas in Gravity Sketch, you draw the line, you already know, okay, I want that line to be down here more. And it's just like that one-to-one spatial interaction. So intuitive. Um,
Yeah, I mean, way back when we were first building the software, Tilt Brush was the other big player in the space at the time, basically. And it's really interesting to see how kind of the two softwares have diverged from each other in terms of like what their purpose is, what they can do, what they're good at, and what they're bad at, and that kind of thing. But certainly, like so much of what we saw from Tilt Brush, or people said about Tilt Brush way back when, was that it was really, really great, and it had a lot of the same kind of creativity, and that you can draw in 3D and do all this kind of stuff. But people at the end of the day felt like it was a bit of a toy because, well, that's what people said basically. It feels like a toy, and I think it's only a very few things that really differentiate Gravity Sketch from Tilt Brush in that way. In that, like, I think the things that we really did differently was that we focused one on like getting files in and out. It's not just about like working in Gravity Sketch. It's about this is content that you can then take on in the workflow as an image or as an export or as any other kind of file format to go into another workflow. But two, I think, yeah, being able to do, I guess, be able to do Gravity Sketch in any order, in any direction is kind of a really important part too. Like, if you draw a line and it's wrong, you can edit that line, you can undo, you can redo. You can start from the tiniest detail or you can start from the broadest strokes. Like there's no prescribed order or like way to do gravity sketch, and so it has a lot more freedom in the kind of, I don't know, I guess the everything can be edited and nothing is final. I think is a big part of that. Um, you can keep changing things and
Yeah.
iterating, and something you did rough at the start, you can refine hours later when it's actually important and this kind of thing, rather than like laying down a stroke and it's stuck there forever, which makes us a bit more like, I guess, like a vector-based tool, more like Illustrator in some ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
but
could see that. It's like, it's always it's scalable too. Like I think another way why well, because I've thought of the vector based sort of analogy a little bit too, where you kind of have a infinite scalability with everything, I don't know if it's infinite, but it's quite large, at least. I mean, you can get really down to the smallest level, and make. I mean, I've seen people do this with Quill, where they have like an entire sketched environment, and then they zoom in, and they have like another whole other world that they've painted and sketched, and within that they have a whole other thing. So it's like, not only do you have can you express just infinite ideas spatially, but even scaling wise, you can zoom in to to a whole other um, sort of like space of ideas, which is kind of wild. But it just is a testament to the endless exploration, creativity you can have in gravity. I don't think that, from what I've seen, because I see a lot of content in the community. I still feel like we haven't fully explored just like the applications of Gravity Sketch yet, just as it currently stands. Seen some really interesting things, some really cool stuff, and it seems like people gravitate towards a lot of the similar things, like cars, shoes, spatial stuff. But what's potentially beyond that? I'm really excited to see what people discover. But one thing I want to ask is how much are and this is getting a little bit more into the app itself, but how much are the sort of the features and functions of Gravity Sketch influenced by sort of where the team envisions Gravity Sketch going, versus professional input, professional requests? How much do you guys try to take those influences into account for when you're adding a new feature or function, or even just like the overall direction towards of where Gravity Sketch is going?
yeah, I mean, I think this is like the hardest part of definitely what I have to do in general at Gravity Sketch is make those decisions, or at least help make those decisions and prioritize. I think in our hearts and like in the original vision, like definitely like, I don't know, the things that we are most passionate about doing are the things that unlock the most creativity and give people the most freedom and ability to create and explore ideas and this kind of thing. But still, like today, the resources that we have and the size of the company and the size of the engineering team we have is tiny compared to like what we could. I don't know if leverage is the right word, but like if we had 50 engineers, we could do, more things, and if we had 100 engineers, we could still be doing more things. And it's kind of really difficult to put a limit on how many people it would take before we could run out of ideas and directions and cool things that we could do. And so unfortunately, we have to pick a very, very small portion of the possible directions that we could go, basically to help us get the company to that next level where we have twice as many people and we can work on twice as many exciting things. Usually it's not quite that good. It's not going to be double, but the more exciting things we can do with the bigger team and more resources and that kind of thing. And so like when people say it'd be great if we had voxel modeling and booleans and all of these like really, really cool, exciting, creative possibilities that other applications are doing and this kind of stuff, it's really sad because those are also very, very big technical challenges for us. Particularly if you multiply that by, having to be able to do things in co-creation, which is one of our other really exciting things that we're desperately trying to roll out and make more available and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It means that like we just can't tackle problems like that right now. We're too deep into this kind of like parametric curve-based NURBS-ish or sub-D modeling world to really step out and tackle those problems yet. I feel like those are things, Booleans and like voxel modeling are things that we desperately want to do, but I still feel like they're fleeting and far, far into the distant future because we need a bigger team to be able to tackle that kind of thing and how to do that in real-time multiplayer and all kinds of stuff like that. Um, and so, like, a lot of what we do is rejected not because we don't want to, and not because we don't think it'd be amazing, and not because it wouldn't help people, but simply because we don't have the resources to do it. I think another thing that's really challenging for us is that I guess the imagination of what we can do has grown so huge that we're also very spread very thinly across all of the different possibilities. Co-creation is like a huge blessing and a curse in that it on a technical level means that so much of the way we have to think and the data that we have to handle has to be really, really lightweight, really, really easy to transfer. And we have to get really clever about how we store things and how we handle everything on a technical level. But, for me, the analogy or the most obvious thing has always been like, or at least in plenty of people's opinions, and definitely in the past, Google Docs and like the whole Google Drive thing, they're some of the worst word processing and spreadsheet applications that have ever graced, modern computer use and that kind of stuff, or at least they were in their inception. But the fact that those documents exist online and you can collaborate over them and you can write comments and leave suggestions and do all of this really, really great stuff. And even further down the line, they have API integrations and scripting languages and all sorts of really, really crazy stuff. Make them, 10, 100,000 times more powerful than just having an offline version of this kind of document editing and this kind of stuff. And I think that's really where we see Gravity Sketch can shine in the future, is that by forcing ourselves to go down this route of making a collaborative tool that can be sent, all this data can be sent over the network in real time and this kind of stuff, we actually unlock a kind of a whole nother space of creativity in collaboration and working together and helping people move faster and solve problems better by being able to work together. There's a crazy cool world where everyone's working in VR or AR headsets and in this like very immersive style where we're all got, in this kind of technology together. And we have like prototypes and working versions of that VR to VR collaboration. But also like VR is great for like getting really, really deep into a workflow and getting really creative. But screens are still great too for a lot of different things. And, we really want to be able to facilitate like the ability for people to collaborate between like the VR world, but also the screen world and the world we're all familiar with and the tools we're familiar with as well. And so I feel like to kind of really tackle, I don't even know if I did a great job of explaining it earlier in this session, but to tackle the kind of really original problem that Gravity Sketch had to solve, which is how do I communicate my idea to you?
Yeah.
It's not just about giving you creative tools to show me the shape and the form of that, but it's also giving us a tool to work together and to talk about it and to communicate and to point things out and kind of work together in that way, rather than having to like screen share VR. You could jump in a session with me and that kind of thing. And so I think we've definitely taken a strong kind of pivot towards this direction of, okay, we have a creativity tool set that's like solid right now. It's nowhere near finished. There's a million different things we can do to improve it. But until we've figured out how to let people collaborate around this data and this stuff they're working on, we shouldn't move too much further forwards on that kind of stuff. And so definitely like that's a lot of that is our internal vision more than just like us working on requests and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also in terms of collaboration, it wasn't us who thought, VR to screen collaboration would be a valuable thing. It was really like we made this really great VR to VR collaboration, so that multiple designers could work together at the same time. And I think we do still think that may be a future way that people design together. But at the same time, so much of a designer's daily job is about collaborating with the people around them. It's about showing the engineering team what they've come up with to see if it's actually viable in the real world, showing the design manager their idea pitched against a load of other ideas to try and win and be the best design and that kind of thing. And basically working with other people is such a huge part, rather than directly working with another designer.
Well,
and so,
yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, I think something it's a huge thing that obviously the team is working on is Landing Pad. I think fits in this area of it really expanding beyond VR and connecting those teams together, not just having to be in a VR headset, um, but be able to view things on your screen, almost bring you back to the screen, because so many people, still are on the screen. Obviously, I mean that's the majority of professionals right now. Could you just maybe share a little bit about like the vision of Landing Pad and and sort of how you think it fits in that sort of collaborative pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Google Docs is still a great analogy, but that's definitely not what Landing Pad is today. Like Landing Pad's the original vision or idea was basically there's loads of people who are going to buy this great Oculus Quest device. It's super portable. It's super cheap. It's definitely the best VR headset, like a dollar for dollar, on the market right now, particularly the Quest 2. But getting files off it is a nightmare. And I think Gravity Sketch, kind of I was saying earlier, the most important thing is really this content is not just locked in a VR experience. It is part of your workflow, and so you need to get those files. And there was even bugs in the Quest firmware that made the USB connection really dodgy, and folders didn't appear, and all kinds of really annoying stuff. So we made this super simple file storage service that lets you get your files off, basically. And at the same time, we were working on this collaboration feature, which let people draw together and create together and that kind of thing. And at some point, it just became really obvious almost that like we need to glue these things together and they shouldn't be separate entities. Like if we've got a cloud storage place online for people to store their work, it would be great if your colleagues could access that data as well. Similarly, like if you've got, I don't know, if you made a bunch of screenshots of your work, or you've got a load of reference models or import library that you want to share with people, and all sorts of different ways that you want to work with other people, it's super valuable to be able to do that without having to do it manually, without having to, remember to send files to people. And it's just not very modern or very like the way that we're used to working, I guess. That's the great thing about being able to work with the internet and that kind of thing, is all of this can be done by magic, by the software. Similarly, obviously, this year has been a hell of a year that nobody saw coming, but it's definitely doubled down remote collaboration and working together from different parts of the world. And so it just, I don't know, it almost seems obvious that if we can build this into a platform where people can not only just store their work, but share their work with their colleagues, work on it together with their colleagues. That might be a real-time kind of collaboration, but it could also be like non-real time. Like I can send you a link, you can do your review, or just write whatever you want to write to me about it, using tools that we've built to make it easy to collaborate on a 3D model. Like one thing that's hard to say in words is like, hey, from this angle, if you look at this piece of geometry, I don't think it lines up very nicely, and this kind of thing. That's hard to say in words and hard to show, but if we can make a really great tool for you to just point that out in a way that I can also see from my side when I need to, we can make it really easy for us to work on a file together and that kind of thing. And so if we can build those tools that let us collaborate together really effectively, suddenly it's a whole different thing. Like maybe Landing Pad will be useful without even needing Gravity Sketch. Maybe, and I don't know if we'll ever achieve this, or I don't know if we'll achieve this in the near future, but maybe it'll be good enough even so that you can just chuck a Blender model up there, or any 3D model from any package. You won't even consider using Gravity Sketch's drawing tools, but it'll be such a great way to collaborate on this 3D model, whether it's rendering it together or editing it together, or figuring out what's good or bad about it. Crazy distant future, like it could have support animations and all kinds of 3D modeling workflows, everything you can imagine, basically. And the core of what we'll be building is the collaboration tools around, like, how do we communicate with each other? How do we review what we've worked on? How do we make it look better? How would this scene look like if I was making a movie from this set that I've drawn? There's so many different like possibilities of wanting to collaborate on a 3D file. Maybe that one's better for VR. Maybe everyone jumps in VR and you can walk around this scene and choose where the best camera angles are, and we can build a camera tool that will help you preview things like that. It's I don't know. There's so many really exciting, crazy, cool ideas that we really want to tackle, and we just have to bite off the ones that we can right now. And also because we're a business, we have to tweak our focuses based on what Gravity Sketch fits into its modern, like in today's workflow. And we've seen like it'd be really, really valuable in automotive design and industrial design and footwear and that kind of stuff, with baby steps into industries more like film and gaming. But as a business and as a young startup who, we've discovered that it's very difficult for us to make enough revenue out of community users and,
Mm.
trying to get subscriptions off general, people who are working on their own and freelancers and that kind of stuff. We're dropping the price and we're trying to make it as accessible as possible. Because right now, as a business, we need to focus on helping out companies, and what companies need is collaboration. And so it all feeds into this feedback loop of where our focuses currently lie. And so that's a lot of what we're working on right now,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing just like all like the features and the vision and just like and like sort of you mentioned earlier, like shifting the focus from just adding features on Gravity Sketch and maybe expanding more to adding more energy to things like landing pad and some of these other areas, because I know that people ask a lot of those questions, like booleans and voxels and all that kind of stuff, and so that brought a lot of clarity, I think, to a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to, I guess, say that there's nothing about the VR application that means that we're kind of dropping it or that it's dead or it's not going to be supported.
Right.
It's just like, for example, I guess we've gone from like maybe two to about 6 or 7 people who are working on like our real-time applications, I guess. But rather than going from 2 to 7 people working on the VR application, there's probably still only 2 people working on the VR application. And the rest of the team are now focusing on more things like the collaboration aspects, and the landing pad website. And we're also working on like a revival of the iPad application, because we still definitely believe in the fact that you can do 3D modeling on a screen.
Yeah.
It's just about how do we do that in a really clever, intuitive, usable way. And leveraging all the great technology we've built for the VR application for real-time collaboration, and you could drop in on an iPad on someone's VR session. Things like that are things that we'd really, really want to achieve.
Yeah. Well, I actually was going to ask that next, because that is another that's like a third major, I think, arm or something that's being developed right now, which is the iPad app, and it is very much circling back to the original sort of the existence of Gravity Sketch. If you could, I would love to hear from you, just like that that process, where that decision to have another look at the iPad app, and I think it's being completely redone. Isn't that right? So
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on its like third completely redone iteration in the whole life cycle of the company and stuff like that, although 2 of them happened before we ever touched VR. I think like one problem that we had with some of the older ideas and things around it is we didn't really understand what we wanted to do with it. We just wanted to make a 3D creativity tool for iPad, whereas now we understand a lot better like what is valuable to people, why they choose to use 2D over 3D, what workflows could really benefit from this kind of thing, and how we can help people, basically. Also, our geometry technology is way, way, way slicker than it used to be, and we can do far more exciting things than we could in the past. But I think, yeah, the decision came from the fact that like VR, I feel like I don't know, from my personal mindset at least, it was really just based on the fact that VR isn't available to everyone still, even today. The first time I ever put a VR headset on, and I feel like the first time pretty much anyone puts a VR headset on and tries it out, and uses an experience that really means something to them, whether it's designing a Gravity Sketch or playing Beat Saber or Half-Life or whatever it may be, and in VR, you feel like, oh my God, why the hell, like, this is the future, this is incredible, everyone's going to be using this, this is life-changing. But until you've had that like moment of putting a VR headset on and experiencing it for the first time, and really like, I don't know, the shock of how good it is these days, particularly if you tried out old VR like Google Cardboard or the original Oculus prototypes, you might have a much worse opinion of what VR is today. So I think for us, the best justification is we want to be able to help and impact more people and be part of more workflows and kind of just have more impact to the company while we're in this kind of transition period where VR is not bread and butter yet. It's not the thing that every designer is buying because they know they need it for their daily work. People still haven't been like touched by this technology that strongly. I still feel like, I don't know, the 3D printing was another one where I was like, oh my God, this is the best technology ever. Why doesn't everyone have one of these? To this day, I don't think everyone does, but being able to create in 3D is still really challenging. And maybe,
Yeah.
um, you know, a world where 3D creativity is easier is part of that journey. But until VR headsets are everywhere, we don't want to be just building things just for that only a small number of people can access, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's really exciting. Even if we can only deliver 30% of the power of Gravity Sketch, we still think that, well, maybe that's a pessimistic percentage. Anyway, even if we can just deliver a fraction of the power of Gravity Sketch to iPad, it could still be really useful and powerful for people. At least that's what we're hoping to achieve.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you kind of touched on it a little bit as far as the VR, the accessibility of VR. You're totally right. That was a lot of my personal experience too, because I did several internships while I was in school, and I talked about and or introduced VR into a lot of them, or asked them if they were interested in using it. And it was either the sentiment was, oh, we tried that, or we weren't really super impressed, because they did some sort of like mobile phone thing, or they thought it was just video games. But then when I finally got the chance to like show them Gravity Sketch, like put on the headset, make like I did like a demo. I was like making a backpack or something, and once I had them try, they were immediately sold. But getting to that point, there's a lot of barriers, and it's true that iPads are being millions and millions and millions are being sold, and just from again personal experience, a lot of companies I were at, they just bought iPads for the entire team, and so it does make a lot of sense to have to go back to that iPad application, and I could totally see it just being like totally exploding, and people using it a ton if it's like easy to use and intuitive to use. And obviously, like there are some limitations because we're somewhat going back to 2D. But if it's seamlessly if it's integrating with these other things, Landing Pad, Gravity Sketch VR, then I think it only adds to the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that one thing that the VR application did very well is it almost, I don't know if it quite made it exist, but it was one of the, I've definitely heard people kind of say something like that, is the concept of a 3D sketch wasn't really a thing beforehand. There wasn't really this idea that you could actually sketch something and be loose and not worry about, and be ambiguous and do this kind of sketching based thing and workflow. In 3D. It just wasn't really a thing. There are definitely other, softwares that are starting to do this kind of thing. I think Grease Pencil is one of the ones that's very popular right now and is also looking really exciting. But definitely Gravity Sketch as a company was never like, hey, let's make a cool VR tool that lets people draw in 3D or anything like that. Definitely the context was always about, it was definitely about why aren't people creating in 3D?
Right.
And understanding that and trying to tackle the problems and kind of find the space that 3D can still be valuable, even in like really early stage workflows.
Yeah, it came and listening to the story, it just sounds like it really came from a really pure place of just of that. That question you just said, which is why aren't more people creating in 3D, and how can and something I've heard from Daniela and Shay say before in the past, which is like, how can we remove the barriers of creating in 3D? Anxiety might be too strong of a word, but just like, of jumping into something like Maya or Blender and having to learn all the tools and just make what's in your head, outside your head. But
Yeah, I think I definitely like the perfect version of Gravity Sketch would just be something more like The Matrix or something like that, where you could plug an electrode into the back of your head and on a screen, or they would immediately 3D print in a nanosecond the exact idea that you had in your brain. And that would be the perfect version of Gravity Sketch. But there's a million reasons why that does not exist, and that's it's not a realistic thing. So what's the next best thing? It seems to be that working with our hands is our best way to get our ideas out in terms of shape and form. But then past that, it's up to like the hardware and the technology that we have available to us. And without VR, you're more limited. But I don't know. Hopefully, we can still make something really useful.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm talking with the community all the time, and just the sentiment is just like, I love Gravity Sketch. It's always a lot of the messages that come in, even for feedback or critique, is always prefaced by, first off, I love this program so much. Like, it's just like, I think everybody's so excited about it. I mean, and I'm still excited about it, 4.5 years later using it, just because of everything that you've talked about, just all the possibilities and the things that still could are potentially to come. I think, like, even with the limitation of resources and time for things like booleans and all of that, I think the possibility of those things being existing in the future are what excites everyone, and keeps everybody going. And then just the existing tools, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's preached a lot, but it's just so powerful, and people are utilizing it in amazing ways. Well, I just want to, we're getting up close to time now, actually. I wanted to kind of ask you two final things, and one of them might be a kind of a bigger question, but feel free to be as vague or specific as you like. But the question is where is Gravity Sketch headed? Would you say, as far as features, functions, vision? I think you may have touched on it already a little bit with landing pad and iPad and all of that. But if you could just give you maybe some final words on maybe what people can expect in the near future. Again, you can be as vague or specific as you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a difficult question. I've definitely alluded to that already in this conversation. But like, I don't know, there's definitely a big update for the VR app coming out. It's probably going to be just shy. It's like just on the other side of Christmas at this point, with loads and loads of new features that tackle a lot of things that people have been struggling with or frustrated about, and this kind of thing. And we're going to keep iterating on that application, forever basically. And there's loads of great stuff that we're going to be bringing out for that over the next year and that kind of thing. Although I don't know if it's entirely my influence, but certainly, well, it's definitely not entirely my influence. But we don't really have a super strong roadmap internally, and we try and be very reactive and make decisions, only in the next few months in the future. And so we never really plan too far ahead, which lets us be really flexible.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also why we never promise anything, and there's no roadmap on our website. And sometimes things never happen. And there's a very famous list on Discord of things that we definitely want to do but still haven't done. But I think what we're going to see a lot, at least in 2021, I think what we're going to see from Gravity Sketch the most is all about collaboration. It's about giving Gravity Sketch to people that don't have access to it right now, still through creative tools. The iPad app will be the first release, but I certainly hope we'll also get it out for Wacom tablet and this kind of stuff. Also making Gravity Sketch useful for people that aren't as core in the creative flow. People who come in, they can join a meeting from a screen through a Google Calendar invite. They can review work with you. They could be a client, or they could be a boss, or they could be anything like that. Basically, like, how do we make Gravity Sketch useful for people that aren't just the core creatives?
Yeah.
And also, how do we make it understandable and learnable for those people as well? So I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but is there a mode that you can just come in and walk around or teleport around and leave a couple of annotations and a couple of doodles, but like not have to learn the whole of Gravity Sketch to be able to work with someone who does know the whole of Gravity Sketch, and that kind of thing. I think it's a lot about that. Landing pad is going to grow a lot over the next year. I think it's going to become far more useful and have far more collaboration features and ways that people can work together. I don't want to make a single promise, but I really, really hope that collaboration in terms of co-sketching will be available to everyone by the end of next year. Hopefully way sooner than that, but I can't promise anything. That's something we really want to do. But at the moment, the servers are very expensive to run, and it's really tricky for us to give away for free, but we can't figure out a way to charge for it that makes sense for people and doesn't, that feels fair and good for everyone. And so there's a lot of stuff we need to figure out before we can make that like an official feature. But also I think it's going to completely change the game in what Gravity Sketch is used for. We've been doing prototypes of like a Pictionary game that you can play in co-sketch and all kinds of stuff like that. Drawing together and working together and playing together is really fun. And so connecting things together is a really big part of what we want to achieve. I think we'll probably manage to make a landing pad kind of mobile app so that you can like, quickly bring up models in AR and see them like in the room with you and things like that, and do
Yeah.
fun stuff like that. One thing that's really cool about the web viewer is it has some rendering features that let you choose how to
Mm.
render your model. And I think we're going to explore a lot more of that space as well. And like quick renders and ways that you can render it without even putting on a VR headset, but also maybe ways that you can do it while you've got a VR headset on. I think we want to explore that. But I think still a huge amount of what we want to do is explorations and finding like how we can make cool stuff that's valuable
Yeah.
and really exciting.
Awesome.
Definitely, there'll be some new geometry technology as well, and like creation tools in the VR application. I don't know what those are going to look like yet. I think there's a lot of stuff that we want to do in terms of improving our surfacing technology. Some of the really long asked for requests, like thickening surfaces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Ways to scale things in different ways and manipulate content in different ways. Array tools. There's loads of other stuff that we want to achieve, and I'm sure we're going to do some of them. I don't know if we're going to do all of them.
Well,
Uh, it- yeah.
yeah, that's great, and that's all super exciting, and I know it's just exciting and encouraging to everyone just to even know that those are like things that the Gravity Sketch team wants to do, and it is super pumped about doing one day. So, and I think that a lot of people are going to love just the stuff that is going to be coming out soon with the new updates, and so yeah. So thank you for just sharing all of that, Daniel, and giving people just a little sneak peek of what the team wants to do.
Yeah, to throw one last thing into
Yeah.
the mix, although I know I'm going to hate myself for doing it, I do think that there's very likely to be a big mannequin or rigging rework on the horizon as well.
All
Certainly
right.
at some point during the next year, it's being pushed from so many different directions. At least like human proportioned mannequins that aren't weirdly proportioned, let alone hopefully a much deeper expansion of that feature. But at what point that will drop within the next year, I have no idea. Could be the very end, could be somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
And rigging and stuff like that as well is really cool. Probably just importing, if anything. But again, I don't know. There are definitely some team members that are probably watching this right now that are either very excited or very scared about me saying this on the YouTube live. But it's something we also think would be really cool. It's just another big tech challenge. But this might finally be the year where we can go for it.
Well, that's all super exciting, Daniel, and yeah, thanks for sharing just the broad vision on all of those things. Um, if I could just ask you my last question, which is there any advice that you would give to anybody watching, just as a professional, as a CTO, Gravity Sketch, someone working in tech, just any parting advice you've learned in your experiences?
Um, I mean, definitely. I don't know if I'm very good at summing things up in a particularly succinct or wise way or anything like that. Um, but I think like the most obvious thing to me is I don't think I've ever, maybe it's just part of my personality, but I don't think I've ever been sad about any of the risks that I've ever taken.
Mm,
Like,
that's really good.
um, don't like I guess I'm fairly young as well, and there's a lot of opportunities available out there and this kind of stuff. But like there was times in Gravity Sketch when I wasn't getting paid. There was times when I was learning to be a programmer where I had no idea if I was ever going to get a job. There was times, there's been so many times when it's not been clear how certain the future was, how secure the future was, how safe the future was, that kind of stuff. Similarly with Gravity Sketch, there was no idea if a feature would ever be valuable or, anything like that. There's so many different, I guess, times when you can go for the safe option or you can go for the riskier option. And it's never turned out badly for me. Or no, that's not fair. Like risks often fail and go wrong, and you make mistakes and things go wrong and that kind of stuff. But I've never felt like it was the wrong decision to take that risk, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Just give like what is there to lose, really?
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
like
great. Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, I take that to heart for sure. Taking risks, you won't regret it. And that's a testament, obviously. I mean, you're living it. So, well, I just want to thank you, Daniel, again for your time today and for sharing just a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are, and also giving people some background on the story of Gravity Sketch as well as where it's headed in the future. It's just been really insightful. So just thank you. Thank you a lot.
Thank you for inviting me. I hope that there are people out there who watch this or watch it, the recording of it, that it's valuable to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Great to mention that. If you missed it in the beginning, this will be available as soon as it's over. So feel free to rewind and go watch. But thank you very much, everyone that was watching live. And thank you again, Daniel. And we will see you. Have a great holidays next week. And we will catch you the week after.
Cool. Ciao for now.
All right. See you, everyone.